My name is Ashley, and here's how my story begins. My sister dared me at Christmas. I dare you to disappear for a few days, and you'll see that no one will miss you. So I said, I accept your challenge, and I disappeared. But they didn't know that. The wine glasses caught the fireplace light as my sister Amanda raised hers in what I'd later recognize as a calculated toast. Christmas Eve dinner at our parents' house in suburban Chicago had been winding down, the usual chaos of wrapping paper and dirty dishes replaced by that comfortable exhaustion families fall into after a full day together. To my wonderful sister, Amanda announced her smile sharp enough to cut glass, always so busy with her important job that she barely has time for family anymore. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. My brother-in-law Kevin shifted uncomfortably beside her, while their kids, 9-year-old Grace and 7-year-old Tyler, continued playing with their new toys in the corner. Mom set down her coffee cup with a soft clink. "That's not fair," I said quietly, keeping my voice level despite the familiar sting of Amanda's barbs. "I was here for Thanksgiving. I came to Grace's school play last month." Amanda laughed, the sound hollow. "Oh, please, Ashley. You showed up 40 minutes late to that play and left before it even ended. You're always running off to some meeting or conference. Face it, you've chosen your career over everything else." My father cleared his throat, clearly wanting to change the subject. But Amanda wasn't finished. She never was when she got like this. The wine had loosened whatever filter usually kept her resentment just below the surface. "Honestly, I dare you to disappear for a few days, Ashley, and you'll see that no one will miss you. We'd probably have a more relaxing holiday without you checking your phone every 5 minutes." The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. My mother gasped softly. Dad looked mortified, and Kevin seemed to be wishing he could sink through the floor. But something in me snapped into place with an almost audible click. "All right," I heard myself say, "I accept your challenge." Amanda blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What?" "Your dare," I repeated. "I accept it. I'll disappear, and we'll see what happens." I stood up, collecting my coat from the back of my chair with steady hands that surprised me. "Merry Christmas, everyone." I walked out before anyone could respond, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The cold December air hit my face as I got into my car, and only then did my hands start shaking on the steering wheel. My phone started ringing before I even made it home to my apartment in Lincoln Park. Mom, then Dad, then Mom again. I turned it off completely and sat in my darkened living room, staring at the city lights through my window. Amanda had always resented me. I understood that on an intellectual level, even if the emotional reality of it still hurt like hell. She'd gotten pregnant with Grace at 21, married Kevin 6 months later, and watched as I finished my MBA and climbed the corporate ladder at Morrison Financial. While she juggled diapers and preschool schedules, I negotiated million-dollar deals and traveled to client meetings in New York and Los Angeles. The thing was, I'd worked myself to the bone for those achievements, 70-hour weeks, countless sacrifices, relationships that withered from neglect. But Amanda only saw the surface, the designer suits, the nice apartment, the career that looked glamorous from the outside. What she didn't see were the panic attacks in office bathrooms. The meals skipped because meetings ran long, the weekends spent catching up on work instead of having a life. What she didn't know was that I'd been planning something for months now, something that her dare had just accelerated. I spent Christmas Day alone, which actually felt peaceful in a strange way. I ordered Chinese takeout, watched old movies, and started making lists. By the time the sun set, I'd outlined exactly what I needed to do. Monday morning, I walked into Morrison Financial and requested a meeting with the senior partners. By Wednesday afternoon, I'd negotiated my exit package. I had 6 months of severance, full benefits through the end of the year, and a glowing letter of recommendation. They seemed almost relieved. I'd been burning out for months, and everyone could see it. I didn't tell my family. My phone stayed off, collecting dozens of increasingly frantic messages. I knew Mom was probably losing her mind with worry, and guilt gnawed at me for that. But I needed space to think, to plan, to figure out what came next. What came next started with a conversation I'd been putting off for years. My college roommate Natasha had moved to Portland 5 years ago to start a boutique consulting firm focused on sustainable business practices. She'd been trying to recruit me for 3 years, dangling the promise of better work-life balance, meaningful projects, and actual human hours. I'd always said no, too entrenched in the prestige and paycheck of Morrison Financial to consider alternatives. I called her on Thursday. "Is that offer still open?" I asked. "Are you serious right now?" Natasha's voice crackled with excitement through the phone. Please tell me you're serious, Ashley. Dead serious. I need a change, Tasha. A big one. We talked for 2 hours. She needed someone with my financial expertise to handle the business side while she focused on client relationships. The salary was roughly 60% of what I'd been making, but Portland's cost of living was lower and the position came with flexibility I'd only dreamed about at Morrison. There's one condition, I said as we wrapped up. I need to start in 3 weeks. I have something I need to take care of first. Natasha agreed immediately. Just like that, I had a new job in a new city with a new life waiting for me. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. The messages flooded in. 47 missed calls, 32 voicemails, texts filling multiple screens. Most were from Mom, increasingly desperate. Dad had called 8 times. Kevin had sent several messages asking if I was okay. Amanda hadn't called once. I scrolled through every message twice, just to be sure. Not a single attempt from my sister to reach out, apologize, or check if I was alive. She'd thrown down her dare and apparently decided to see it through. Something cold settled in my chest. Fine. She wanted to see if anyone would miss me. I'd show her exactly what my absence looked like. I called Mom first. She answered on the first ring, her voice breaking with relief. Oh, thank God. Where have you been? We've been worried sick. I'm fine, Mom. I just needed some space to think. Space, Ashley. You disappeared on Christmas Eve. Your father and I have barely slept. We were about to call the police. Guilt stabbed through me, sharp and immediate. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but I needed to figure some things out. We talked for an hour. I explained that Amanda's comment had hurt more than I'd let on, that I'd been struggling with burnout, that I needed to make some changes in my life. Mom cried, apologized for not seeing how hard I'd been pushing myself, and begged me to come over so she could see with her own eyes that I was okay. Soon, I promised, but I need a bit more time first. Dad called 30 seconds after I hung up with Mom. His conversation was shorter, more practical. Are you safe? He asked. Do you need anything, Ashley? I'm safe, Dad, and actually I need to talk to you about something. My father had retired from his accounting practice 2 years earlier, but he still maintained his license and occasionally did consulting work for former clients. What I needed from him was different, though. You remember those stocks Grandma left me, I asked. Of course. You've been sitting on them for years. They've appreciated nicely. I want to cash them out, all of them. And I need your help setting up a trust. There was a pause. What kind of trust? An educational trust for Grace and Tyler, but with very specific conditions. I spent the next hour explaining my plan to Dad. He asked careful questions, made suggestions about the legal structure, and finally said, "This is incredibly generous." Then he added gently, "But your sister." Dad, did Amanda call you at all this past week? I asked. Did she once ask if you'd heard from me? Another pause, longer this time. No, she didn't. Exactly. We spent the next week setting everything up. The stock sold for just over $340,000. With Dad's help, I established an educational trust that would pay for Grace and Tyler's college expenses, but only if certain conditions were met. The children had to maintain at least a 3.0 GPA, attend accredited institutions, and the trust would pay directly to the schools rather than going through their parents. The kicker, Amanda and Kevin couldn't touch the money, and they'd have no control over how it was distributed. I appointed Dad as the trustee with a backup trustee from his former firm. The trust documents were ironclad, reviewed by 2 different attorneys. I also liquidated other investments, cleared out my savings, and started making arrangements. I hired movers for my apartment, gave notice to my landlord, and began the process of relocating my life across the country. 2 weeks after Christmas, I finally agreed to meet my family for dinner. Amanda had been oddly silent through the family text chain, organizing the gathering, sending only a brief, "I'll be there when Mom asked who could make it." The restaurant Mom chose was a nice Italian place in Oak Park, neutral territory. I arrived exactly on time to find everyone already seated, Mom and Dad, Amanda, and Kevin, even Aunt Rachel, who'd apparently been drafted as moral support. Amanda looked surprised to see me, though she tried to hide it. Her eyes widened for just a second before she pasted on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, as I took the empty seat across from her. Amanda, Kevin said quietly, a warning in his voice. "What I'm just saying, it's nice of Ashley to fit us into her busy schedule." I smiled calmly and opened my menu. Actually, my schedule's about to get a lot less busy. That got everyone's attention. Mom leaned forward eagerly. "What do you mean, honey? I quit my job. I'm moving to Portland in 4 days to work for a sustainable consulting firm. Better hours, more meaningful work, and a chance to actually have a life outside the office. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Mom's mouth opened and closed without sound. Dad, who already knew, gave me an encouraging nod. Aunt Rachel looked thrilled. Kevin seemed genuinely happy for me. Amanda's face went through several expressions before settling on something like disbelief. You quit Morrison Financial. Are you insane? Do you know how many people would kill for that job? I know exactly what that job costs, I said evenly. And I'm not willing to pay the price anymore. This is because of what I said, isn't it? Amanda's voice rose slightly. You're having some kind of dramatic meltdown because I hurt your feelings. You told me to disappear and see if anyone would miss me. So I did. And you know what I discovered? I met her eyes directly. You never called. Not once. Everyone else in this family was worried sick, but you couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone. Amanda's face flushed red. I was giving you space. That's what you wanted, right? You walked out on Christmas Eve, after you deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone. My voice stayed level, but I could feel the anger underneath, cold and controlled. You've been taking shots at me for years, Amanda. My job, my life choice is the fact that I don't have kids. You act like I chose my career specifically to spite you, like my success somehow diminishes yours. That's not Amanda began, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. I thought a lot these past couple of weeks about our relationship and why it's so broken. You resent me because you think I have everything easy, while you struggle with the kids and the bills and the day-to-day reality of your life. But you have no idea what I've sacrificed. Tears were starting to form in Amanda's eyes, but I couldn't stop now. This had been building for too long. I've spent the last 8 years working myself to exhaustion. I continued missing birthdays and holidays and every normal human experience because I thought success would make me happy. I thought if I just worked hard enough, climbed high enough, earned enough money, I'd finally feel like I'd accomplished something. But all I feel is empty. Mom reached across the table to squeeze my hand, her own eyes glistening. So thank you, I added. Actually, your dare made me realize I needed to change everything. I cashed out my investments, quit my job, and I'm starting over in a place where I can build the life I actually want. Amanda wiped at her eyes. You cashed out your investments? Most of them, except for the $340,000 I put into an educational trust for Grace and Tyler. The table went completely silent. Kevin's jaw dropped. Mom gasped. Even Dad, who knew about the trust, seemed surprised by me announcing it so bluntly. What Amanda whispered. I set up a trust fund for your children's college education. It'll cover tuition, books, housing, everything they need to get their degrees. The money is locked away, specifically for that purpose, managed by Dad, and neither you nor Kevin can touch it. Why would you? Amanda's voice cracked. I don't understand. Because Grace and Tyler are innocent kids who deserve every opportunity regardless of how their mother treats me. Because I love them, even if you and I can't get along. And because I wanted to make sure that when I do disappear to Portland, I leave behind something meaningful for the people who actually matter. Amanda buried her face in her hands and started crying properly. Kevin put his arm around her, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, gratitude mixed with something else. Shame, maybe. I can't accept this, Amanda said through her tears. It's too much. You don't have a choice. The trust is established. The documents are signed and the money is already allocated. The trust is established. The documents are signed and the money is already allocated. The funds will be there when they need them for college. But why? Amanda looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. After everything I said, after how I've treated you. Why would you do this, Ashley? I considered my answer carefully. Because somewhere under all the resentment and competition, you're still my sister. And because I refuse to let your children suffer because we can't figure out how to have an adult relationship. Mom was openly crying now, and Aunt Rachel was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Dad cleared his throat roughly, looking proud and sad at the same time. There are conditions, I continued. The kids have to maintain decent grades, attend accredited schools, and use the money for legitimate educational expenses. But other than that, it's theirs. No strings attached, no control for me. I won't even be here to see how they use it. You're really leaving? Kevin asked quietly. I am. Portland's been waiting for me, and I've been too scared to take the leap. Turns out all I needed was my sister daring me to disappear. The irony wasn't lost on anyone at the table. We ordered food after that, though Amanda barely touched hers. The conversation stayed lighter, carefully, avoiding the emotional minefield we'd just navigated. Mom told stories about her book club. Dad discussed his golf game. Aunt Rachel shared updates about her son's new baby. As dinner wound down and we waited for the check, Amanda finally spoke to me directly again. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for what I said at Christmas. For all of it, really. I've been jealous and petty, and I took it out on you." I studied her face, looking for sincerity. What I found was exhaustion and regret, the same emotions I'd been carrying around for weeks. "I'm sorry too," I said, "for not being more present, for letting work consume me so completely that I missed out on watching your kids grow up, for not trying harder to understand your life instead of just defending my own." "Can we start over?" Amanda asked. "Maybe not right away, but eventually." Maybe I agreed, but from a distance. I think we both need space to figure out who we are without constantly comparing ourselves to each other. She nodded, accepting that it wasn't a happy ending, but it was honest, and that felt more valuable than forced reconciliation. The next 3 days passed in a blur of final arrangements. I said goodbye to colleagues, forwarded my mail, confirmed details with the movers. My apartment, which had felt like home for 5 years, slowly transformed into an empty shell of bare walls and echoing rooms. Mom and Dad came over on my last night in Chicago. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor of my empty living room, eating off paper plates and reminiscing about easier times. Mom cried when she hugged me goodbye, making me promise to call at least twice a week. Dad slipped an envelope into my hand as he left. Inside was a check for $20,000 and a note in his precise handwriting. "For your fresh start. Proud of you for having the courage to choose happiness. Love, Dad." I cried for the first time since Christmas Eve, sitting alone on my air mattress in the empty apartment. Amanda texted me that night. Just 3 words. "Thank you, really." I stared at those words for a long time before responding. "Take care of those kids. They're lucky to have you." She sent back a simple heart emoji. It wasn't much, but it was something. The drive to Portland took 3 days. I took my time stopping at roadside attractions and small-town diners, staying in cheap motels, and watching sunsets from rest stops. Somewhere in Wyoming, with mountains stretching endlessly in every direction, I felt something shift inside me. The knot of stress and obligation that had lived in my chest for years loosened just a fraction. Portland welcomed me with rain, of course. Natasha met me at my new apartment in the Hawthorne district with coffee and a smile. "Ready for your new life?" she asked. "More than ready," I said, and I meant it. The consulting firm was everything Natasha had promised, smaller, more personal, focused on work that felt purposeful rather than just profitable. My first project involved helping a local food cooperative restructure their finances for sustainability. I worked normal hours, ate lunch away from my desk, and discovered what weekends felt like when you weren't catching up on emails. I joined a yoga studio, started hiking on Saturdays, made friends with my neighbors. Slowly, carefully, I built a life that felt like mine, rather than some checklist of achievements I was supposed to complete. Mom called twice a week as promised, filling me in on family news. Grace had started piano lessons. Tyler was obsessed with dinosaurs. Amanda had gone back to school part-time to finish her degree in elementary education, something she'd abandoned when she got pregnant with Grace. "She seems happier," Mom reported one Sunday afternoon. "More settled somehow. Whatever happened between you two at that dinner really changed something." 3 months after I moved, Amanda called me directly for the first time. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hey," she said when I picked up. "Is this a good time?" "Sure. What's up?" "I wanted you to know that I'm graduating this December. Finishing my degree finally." "That's wonderful, Amanda. Congratulations." "Kevin and I also met with Dad to understand the trust better. We want to make sure we're teaching the kids the right values about education and money." She paused. "You did an incredible thing. I don't think I fully understood that until recently. The kids deserve it." "They do," she agreed. "But so do you. Ashley, you deserve to be happy, to have a life that doesn't revolve around work. I'm glad you found that." "Thanks," I said softly. "That means a lot." We talked for almost an hour, really talked for the first time in years. About her going back to school, about my new job, about the ways we'd both been struggling, without realizing the other was struggling too. It wasn't a magical fix to our relationship, but it felt like a real beginning. "You know what's funny," Amanda said before we hung up. "You disappeared like I dared you to, but everyone definitely noticed. Even you," I teased. "Especially me," she admitted. I just didn't want to admit it. I was too proud and too angry to reach out. After we said goodbye, I stood on my apartment balcony, watching the Portland rain and thinking about how strange life could be. A cruel dare meant to hurt me had ultimately forced the changes I'd been too afraid to make on my own. Amanda's challenge had freed me from a life that was slowly killing me, even as it revealed the painful truth about our relationship. 6 months into my Portland life, I met someone at a sustainable business conference. His name was Marcus. He worked in urban planning and had the kind of easy smile that made you want to keep talking. We went for coffee after the conference, then dinner the following week, then weekend hikes that turned into a regular routine. "Tell me about your family," he asked one Saturday as we sat on a fallen log overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. I told him the whole story, the Christmas dare, the disappearing act, the trust fund, the complicated relationship with my sister. He listened without judgment, nodding occasionally, his hand warm around mine. "So she dared you to disappear," he said when I finished, "and you basically transformed her entire life." "Pretty much. That's either the best revenge or the best gift, depending on how you look at it." I laughed. "Maybe it's both." "Do you think you'll ever move back to Chicago?" "I don't know. Probably not. Portland feels right in a way Chicago never did." I leaned against his shoulder, watching eagles circle above the river. Besides, some distance between me and Amanda is probably healthy. We're doing better now, but we need our own separate lives. "Fair enough." Marcus squeezed my hand. "Though for the record, I'm really glad she made that dare." "Oh yeah, why is that?" Marcus kissed the top of my head. "Because otherwise, you never would have ended up here, and I never would have met you." That summer, I flew back to Chicago for Grace's 10th birthday party. The gathering was at my parents' house, the backyard decorated with streamers and balloons. Grace squealed when she saw me running over for a hug that nearly knocked me down. "Aunt Ashley, you came." Of course I came, wouldn't miss it. Amanda walked over looking relaxed in jeans and a casual top. We hugged, and it felt almost natural. "Thanks for being here," she said. "Thanks for inviting me." Tyler showed me his dinosaur collection with the single-minded intensity only an 8-year-old could muster. Grace performed a piano piece she'd been practicing. Kevin manned the grill, and Dad helped him while offering mostly unhelpful suggestions. Mom fluttered around, making sure everyone had enough to eat. It was normal, wonderfully boringly normal. Later, after the cake and presents, Amanda and I found ourselves alone on the back porch while the kids played in the yard. "I've been thinking about that night a lot," Amanda admitted. "What I said to you at Christmas." "Ancient history," I replied, and I meant it. "No, let me say this. I was cruel because I was miserable, and miserable because I thought you had everything I wanted." She stared out at the yard. "But I was wrong. You were just as unhappy as I was, just for different reasons." "We were both stuck," I agreed, "just in different ways." "Your disappearing act woke us both up," Amanda said. "Me to go back to school and figure out who I am beyond being a mom. You to build a life that actually makes you happy." Amanda smiled. "So I guess, in a weird way, we both won. Or we both lost the lives we thought we wanted and found something better." Deep, Amanda teased, and I laughed. Grace called for us to come play a game, and we rejoined the party. The afternoon passed in a haze of kid games and adult conversation, the kind of family gathering I'd missed, without realizing I was missing it. Flying back to Portland that night, I thought about how far I'd traveled in more ways than miles. The person who had walked out of that Christmas dinner had been brittle with exhaustion and hurt. The person returning to Portland was softer, somehow more flexible, willing to bend instead of break. Amanda and I would never be best friends. Our relationship would always be complicated, marked by years of resentment and competition that couldn't be erased overnight. But we'd found something better than forced closeness, mutual respect, honest communication, and the ability to support each other from a healthy distance. 2 years after the Christmas dare, I got a text from Amanda with a photo attached. Grace was standing in front of a piano at some kind of recital, beaming at the camera. The message read, "She says she wants to study music in college. Thank you for making that possible." I sent back a heart and then called Marcus over to look at the photo. We were in the apartment we'd recently moved into together, bigger than my old place, with room for both our stuff and our future. "Your niece?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Yeah, she's incredible. Takes after her Aunt Ashley." I turned in his arms to face him. "So she accidentally did you the biggest favor of your life by trying to hurt you." "Exactly." I kissed him. "Sometimes the best revenge is just living well." "That's not revenge," he murmured. "That's just wisdom." Maybe he was right. Maybe what I'd done wasn't revenge at all. I'd walked away from toxicity, restructured my entire existence, secured my niece and nephew's futures, and found actual happiness. If Amanda saw any of that as punishment, that was her problem, not mine. The dare had been meant to prove I was disposable, forgettable, unnecessary to my family's happiness. Instead, it proved I was strong enough to choose myself, generous enough to think of others, even when hurt, and brave enough to start completely over when my life stopped working. 4 years after the dare, I stood in my parents' living room on Christmas Eve watching Grace and Tyler open presents while Marcus chatted with Kevin about football. Amanda was in the kitchen helping Mom with dinner, the two of them laughing about something. Dad caught my eye and raised his glass in a subtle toast. I raised mine back. "A penny for your thoughts," Marcus asked, sliding an arm around my waist. "Just thinking about how different everything is from 4 years ago. Better different. So much better." I watched Grace show Tyler her new sheet music, both kids excited about their presents. The trust fund sat waiting for them, growing steadily. A promise of futures filled with possibility. So much better. Amanda emerged from the kitchen carrying a platter, saw me watching, and smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. I smiled back. We'd never fully repair everything that was broken between us. Some cracks were too deep. Some wounds left scars. But we'd found a way forward that honored both our differences and our family ties. We'd learned to exist in each other's lives without trying to compete, diminish, or hurt. That night after dinner, when everyone was settled in the living room with coffee and dessert, Amanda raised her glass. "I want to make a toast," she announced. Everyone quieted down, turning to look at her. 4 years ago, I said something incredibly stupid and hurtful to my sister. I won't repeat it because I'm still ashamed of it. But that moment changed both of our lives in ways I never could have imagined. She looked directly at me, her eyes shining. "You took my dare and disappeared. And in doing so, you showed all of us what really matters. You rebuilt your life, secured my children's futures, and somehow found it in your heart to forgive me for being a complete idiot." "Amanda," I began, but she shook her head. "Let me finish. I'm grateful every day for the trust you set up, but I'm more grateful that you're here now, happy and whole and thriving. You deserve that all along, Ashley. And I'm sorry it took me being cruel for you to give it to yourself." She raised her glass higher. "To my sister who took a dare meant to diminish her and used it to soar. I'm proud of you and I love you." Everyone raised their glasses, echoing the sentiment. I felt tears prick my eyes as I stood and walked over to hug Amanda properly. "I love you too," I whispered. "Even when I didn't like you very much, I still loved you." "Same," she whispered back. "Always." We pulled apart, both of us crying. A little, both of us laughing at ourselves for crying. Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, and even Dad looked suspiciously misty. Later, as Marcus and I drove back to our hotel, he took my hand across the center console. "That was beautiful," he said. "Your whole family really has come so far." "We have," I agreed. "It's funny how the worst moments can lead to the best changes." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't taken the dare, if you just let it go?" I considered that watching Chicago's winter streets pass by outside the window. I think I would have burned out completely within a year. Probably had a breakdown. Maybe ended up in the hospital. I was heading toward a cliff, and Amanda's dare made me veer off course just in time. "So in a way she saved your life," Marcus said. "In a way I saved my own life," I replied. "She just gave me the push I needed to do it." The next morning, before we left to head back to Portland, I stopped by Amanda's house. She answered the door in pajamas, hair pulled back, looking comfortable and real. "Hey," she said, surprised. "I thought you guys left already." "Flight's not until this afternoon. I wanted to talk to you alone for a minute." We sat in her kitchen, coffee mugs, warming our hands. The house was quiet. Kevin had taken the kids to his parents' place for the morning. "I never properly thanked you," I said. Amanda laughed, "For being a terrible sister, for giving me an excuse to change everything I said simply." "You were right, Amanda. I was too absorbed in my career, too disconnected from family, too afraid to admit I was unhappy. Your dare forced me to confront all of that." "I didn't mean to help you," Amanda said softly. "I meant to hurt you." "I know," I said. "But you helped anyway. And now I have this amazing life in Portland with Marcus, with work I love, with actual balance and joy. I never would have found any of that if you hadn't pushed me." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," I said gently, "but I'm giving it anyway. Because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I'm tired of being exhausted." We hugged across the kitchen table, awkwardly reaching over coffee mugs and placemats. Two sisters who'd fought their way through the worst of their relationship and come out the other side bruised but intact. "Be happy," Amanda said as I got up to leave. "That's all I want for you now. Just be genuinely, completely happy." "I am," I promised. "Finally, I really am." Driving to the airport, Marcus asked, "Any regrets?" "About what?" "All of it. Leaving Chicago, quitting your job, the way things went down with Amanda." I thought about it seriously, wanting to give an honest answer. "No," I said at last. not a single one. Everything that happened needed to happen exactly the way it did. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Back in Portland, life continued its steady rhythm. Work projects came and went. Weekends were spent hiking or exploring new restaurants. Marcus and I talked about maybe getting married someday, but we weren't in any rush. I video chatted with Mom every Sunday, exchanged memes with Amanda throughout the week, and watched Grace and Tyler grow up through photos and occasional visits. The trust fund sat there waiting patiently for the day Grace would need it. She was 13 now, talking about music schools and composition. Tyler was 11, still obsessed with dinosaurs, but also showing an interest in art. They were good kids growing into interesting people, and I was proud to have a small part in ensuring their futures. 6 years after the dare, I got an email from Grace. She was 15 now, in high school, and apparently doing a project on family history. Dear Aunt Ashley, it read, "For my English class, we're supposed to interview a family member about an important life decision. Mom said I should talk to you about why you moved to Portland. She says it's a good story about being brave. Can we video chat sometime this week?" I smiled, remembering the person who'd walked out on Christmas Eve, angry and hurt and desperate for change. We video chatted that Saturday. Grace appeared on my screen, a young woman now, rather than a little girl, with Amanda's eyes and Kevin's smile. So she said, "Notebook ready. Mom says you made a big change because of something she said." What happened? I considered how much to tell her, how honest to be. Then I decided she deserved the truth. Age appropriate, but real. "Your mom and I were fighting a lot back then," I said. "We didn't understand each other very well, and we said hurtful things. One Christmas, she dared me to disappear for a few days to prove that nobody would miss me. I took that dare, and it made me realize I needed to change my whole life." Grace's eyes widened. "That's kind of mean." "It was," I admitted. "But sometimes people say mean things when they're unhappy or scared. Your mom was struggling back then, and I was too. We just didn't know how to talk about it." "So what did you do?" Grace asked. "I quit my job, moved across the country, and started over. It was scary, but it was also the best decision I ever made." "Do you think I should do something like that someday?" "Just change everything if I'm not happy." I thought carefully. "I think you should have the courage to choose yourself even when it's hard," I said. "But I also think you should talk to people you trust before making huge decisions. I probably should have handled things better with the family, learned from my mistakes." We talked for almost an hour, Grace asking thoughtful questions about fear and courage and family. She was a smart kid, perceptive and kind. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, thinking about how to explain that time to someone so young, how to convey the suffocating weight of a life lived wrong, the desperate need for change, the way a single moment can become a catalyst for complete transformation. Marcus found me lost in thought and sat beside me. "Grace," he guessed. "Yeah," I said, talking to her about the dare and everything after. "How'd that go?" "Good," I said. Strange to revisit it all through her perspective. She sees it as this dramatic story of courage and change, but living through it just felt like survival. "Maybe both things are true," Marcus said. "Sometimes survival is dramatic." "When did you get so wise?" I teased. "I have a wise fiancé," he said. "It rubs off." I laughed and kissed him. 3 months later, he proposed on a hiking trail overlooking Mount Hood, and I said yes, without hesitation. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony in Portland, with both our families flying in for the celebration. Amanda was there with Kevin and the kids, looking genuinely happy for me. She'd finished her teaching degree and was working at Grace's middle school, now teaching 7th grade English. Tyler had moved on from dinosaurs to astronomy, dreaming of being an astronaut. Grace was preparing for her first big piano competition. At the reception, Amanda pulled me aside. "Can I say something, Ashley?" she asked. "Always." "I'm really glad you're happy," she said. "I mean genuinely, truly glad. And I'm sorry it took me being awful for you to find this." "Water under the bridge," I said, and meant it. "We're good now. Different than before, but good." "Different is better," Amanda said. "We were toxic before. Now we're just sisters." "Just sisters," I repeated, liking the sound of it. 5 years after the Christmas dare, I sat in a coffee shop in Portland, editing a proposal for a major new client, when my phone rang. "Mom." "Hi, Mom. What's up?" "Turn on the news local Chicago station. Grace is playing." I pulled up a live stream and watched as my teenage niece performed at a citywide music competition. Her fingers flew across the piano keys, her face concentrated and joyful. The piece was complex and beautiful, and she played it flawlessly. When she finished, the camera caught her face breaking into a huge smile as the audience applauded. In that moment, she looked so much like Amanda that it made my heart squeeze. The commentator mentioned that Grace was being courted by several prestigious music programs, that she had a bright future ahead of her. They didn't mention the trust fund waiting to make that future possible, but I knew it was there, patient and ready. Later that day, Amanda sent me a video of Grace's performance, along with a message. She's going to need that trust fund soon. I can't believe she's already thinking about conservatories. Thank you for making her dreams possible, I replied. She made her dreams possible by working hard and having talent. The money just removes obstacles. Amanda wrote back. Still, you gave her a gift most kids don't get. You gave her parents who support her dreams, I answered. That's worth more. 5 years, 7-9. Life in Portland deepened and grew richer. Marcus and I bought a house, adopted a dog, hosted dinner parties, and built a community. Work continued to be challenging, but fulfilling, leaving me time for hobbies, relationships, and the simple pleasure of weekends without emails. Amanda and I talked regularly now. Our relationship transformed into something neither of us could have predicted that Christmas Eve. We weren't best friends, but we were real friends, able to be honest and supportive and occasionally annoying to each other in the way only siblings can be. Grace graduated high school with honors and accepted a spot at a prestigious music conservatory. The trust fund activated, paying for her tuition and expenses exactly as intended. She sent me a thank you card in her careful handwriting. This opportunity is changing my life. I'll never be able to repay you, but I'll make you proud. I cried reading it, then sent her a care package of snacks and encouraging notes. Tyler was in high school now, talking about studying astrophysics. The trust fund would be there for him too, waiting until he needed it, providing the same opportunities his sister had received. 11 years after the dare, I flew back to Chicago for Christmas. The whole family gathered at my parents' house, like always, the tradition continuing, despite all the changes we'd weathered. As I walked in the door, Grace was home from college for break, practicing on the same piano she'd learned on as a child. Tyler was sprawled on the couch reading a book about black holes. Amanda and Kevin were in the kitchen helping Mom cook. Dad was setting up a new puzzle on the dining room table. Everything was the same. Everything was completely different. Aunt Ashley Tyler jumped up to hug me, now taller than me, at 18. Tell Mom I should definitely apply to MIT. Don't encourage him, Amanda called from the kitchen. He's already insufferable about it. I laughed, feeling the warmth of being home, of being missed, of being part of something bigger than myself. That night after dinner, I found myself alone in the living room with Amanda, while everyone else was outside watching Dad try to hang Christmas lights despite the cold. You know what I think about sometimes, Amanda said. That dare. How stupid I was. Ancient history, I said. I know, she replied, but still. What if you just ignored me? What if you hadn't left that night? Then I'd probably still be in Chicago, I said honestly. Miserable in some corporate job alone on Christmas because I'd be working. I squeezed her hand. You freed me, Amanda. In the worst possible way, at the worst possible time, you gave me exactly what I needed permission to leave. Permission to choose myself. We sat in comfortable silence, watching through the window as Marcus helped Dad untangle a strand of lights, while Tyler offered unhelpful advice and Grace recorded the whole thing on her phone. They didn't know that when you disappeared you'd come back different, Amanda said softly. Better. Happier. Neither did I admitted. I just knew I couldn't keep living the way I was. Do you ever regret it? Amanda asked. Moving away, missing things. I considered the question honestly. Sometimes I miss being closer, I said. But I don't regret the choice. Some people need to leave home to figure out who they are. And some people need to stay home to figure out the same thing Amanda said. Going back to school, becoming a teacher, that saved me too. We both needed saving, I agreed. We just saved ourselves in different ways. Marcus came back inside, stomping snow off his boots. Your dad is determined to get those lights up, even though it's literally below freezing out there. That's Dad, Amanda, and I said in unison, then laughed at the jinx. Later, as I lay in bed in my childhood bedroom, with Marcus sleeping beside me, I thought about the strange journey from that awful Christmas dare to this moment of peace. The anger and hurt had faded, replaced by understanding and acceptance. The desperate need to escape had transformed into the freedom to choose when and how to visit. I'd taken Amanda's dare and disappeared, but I'd come back on my own terms with my own life as my own person. The woman I'd become was someone that lost, exhausted person could never have imagined. And somehow, impossibly, Amanda and I had found our way back to each other, not as we were before, not as competitors or critics, but as adults who'd both grown enough to admit their mistakes and appreciate their differences. The trust fund would keep growing, waiting for Tyler's turn. Grace was thriving in her music program. Amanda was happy teaching. Kevin had been promoted at work. Mom and Dad were healthy and content. Marcus and I were building a good life together in Portland. Everything had worked out not despite that Christmas dare, but because of it. Sometimes the worst moments really do lead to the best changes. Sometimes cruelty reveals truth. Sometimes disappearing is exactly what you need to do to find yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the sister who dared you to leave is the same one who's genuinely happy you found your way.